week 3 of our summer series, The Bible Says.
What?
Today we're going to look at what the Bible says about guilt from the past, and particularly crippling guilt from the past. Now what we're not going to look at is false guilt. Like when someone tries to make you feel guilty because you parked the car a little bit crooked, you didn't put the toilet paper back on when you finished it, or you got a B instead of an A and your parents are like, you failed me. We're not talking about that, because those aren't bad things. That's just someone else trying to make you feel bad. That's a sermon for another day. We're not going to talk about that. And we're also not talking about kind of how guilt sometimes is kind of a healthy reminder. It separates us from sociopaths. It's like, I don't want to hurt people's feelings. I want to be sensitive. We're not talking about kind of that sensitivity to proper behavior, those little nudges that keep us kind of within healthy parameters of behavior and action. We're not really talking about that either. What we're talking about is that, we've all made mistakes in the past. We've all made unmentionable mistakes. I'll mention a couple of them. They'll become mentionable. And we feel so bad about those things that we still feel guilty. And for some of us it becomes this heavy guilt that we just kind of carry around with us because of these mistakes we've made in the past. Now if you're the kind of person that actually doesn't feel guilty about anything, maybe you've done some horrific things in your past, bad mistakes, you've hurt people, they're still suffering because of your mistake, and you don't feel like you have any heavy rock, but you probably should, this is still going to be relevant to you because we're going to find kind of a middle ground between the crippling guilt and the nothing guilt, because somewhere in the middle there's like a healthy place. So even though you may not be walking around with one of these, this still should be helpful because maybe you should be walking around with something. So that's where we're going today. Another way of posing the question would be, how do we forgive ourselves? How do we find a way to let go of this and move on? Because it's difficult. I'll give you a couple examples. This one you've heard before. When I first came to Vancouver, I was involved in this little church, and I was like all gung-ho. I was like making friends with everyone in the little church. I made friends with this Vietnamese family, and I began tutoring their kids, helping them learn to read, spending time in their home, eating supper there. I got haircuts there. They mended my clothes there. Like they were such a great family. Like I became kind of an uncle to these little kids. But I was young. I was 20, 21. And then I got a position in another church. So in my mind, it's like I used to be in this church. I used to hang out with these people. Now I'm in this church. I hang out with these people. And I kind of just made the transition. But in a little kid's mind, they don't understand that. They don't understand staffing. They don't understand switching churches. They only understand, where'd Brian go? Where'd Uncle Brian go? He's not here anymore. And 4 years ago, I ran into this guy through a series of events. He's now, a young man. And I said, hey, how you doing? I'm catching up. And he immediately said, like right away, within about a minute or two, he said, Brian, little kids don't understand. I understand now you had to leave a church, whatever. But little kids don't understand that. You were like an uncle to us, and then you were gone. You caused a lot of deep hurt. And, you should have known better than that. And I was like, oh. It's like, oh, I can't believe I did that to this little guy. Like he was probably like, sad, where's Brian? Who's going to help me? Like, maybe he went through some like attachment or who knows what. Like, I'm not good enough to Brian, keep in touch with me. Or another one is, when I was in Bible college, my 3rd year in Alberta, I was like 19. We were going tobogganing one day, and I was being careless, reckless, trying to impress a girl, sliding down on the toboggan with this girl. It was kind of dark, and I was like going a little bit too fast, a little bit too reckless. And I saw we were heading for a fence. So I jumped off, thinking she would jump off too. She didn't jump off, and she nailed the fence with her head, and she ran right into the fence, was unconscious. And I was like, ugh. And so they took her to the hospital, and fortunately, she was okay after a while. And I was like, What if she had been hurt worse? What if something worse had happened? So I carried that around with me. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about. Maybe for you it's as simple as a sports failure. Usually you play defense on the football team, they put you on offense. This one time you're in the end zone, coach takes a chance, throws you the ball, and you drop it, and you never get to play offense again, and you relive that. It's not really, that's kind of tame, but for others of us, it's words unsaid. Someone's dying, and you should have said I love you, but you never said it, and then you never get a chance. You carry this thing around. Or it's wrong words said. Like in the heat of the moment, in anger, you said something that you can never take back. And you just wish you could, and you relive that, replay it over and over again. Maybe you relapse into some kind of addiction or a compulsion. Maybe you're involved in a severe accident, carelessness on the road. Heaven forbid, maybe you're involved in a hit and run, or something that really hurt someone physically in the past. Maybe you're involved in self-harm. So maybe some kind of violence against your kids or your wife or your husband. You're just like, oh, I wish I could take that back, but you can't. There's more tender areas, let's just list them off. A lot of women struggle with abortions they've had in the past, so they carry this around for that. So maybe a date rape thing, or like you pressured someone too much, and you wish you could just take that back, but you can't. Or cheating on a spouse, or a boyfriend or a girlfriend. All of us have the unmentionable ones, and we carry them around like this. Or we don't carry them around, we probably should feel something, but we create some barriers. We carry them around and we're like, oh, I want to get rid of this. I want to find a way to get rid of the weight of this. Yet at the same time, we don't. We want to keep this because if we were to just walk away from this and just leave it, just like leave it in the ditch, it's almost like we don't care. It's almost like, I can't forget. What I did was so bad, they're still dealing with the repercussions of it, the person I hurt. How can I just walk away and forget all about it? Am I that calloused? Am I that weak to just forget it? No, I need to carry this. I need to pay for what I've done, so I'm going to carry this around with me. How can I be freed while others are still suffering? I'm reminded of the football player Dante Stallworth in the news recently. He was drunk, driving his car, 7 a.m., drove over a guy, Mario Reyes, killed him. And what Dante did for the Cleveland Browns, he gave the family $4 million, and so they dropped the charges, and the courts gave him 30 days in jail for killing somebody. And we're like, we don't want to be like that guy. The punishment's got to fit the crime, so I want this to go. It's crippling me. How can I let it go? What I did was too bad. How can I just move on? How can I minimize the severity of what I did? So we want to move on because we know this hurts. Like you're carrying around guilt, like it hurts you physically, like it hurts mentally. You get more frustrated, your wick is shorter, you get more angry, you go into depression. That's all the results of carrying this thing around. You're exhausted, like it's heavy. You end up hurting more people because you're carrying this around. Or you distance yourself from others because you don't want them to know about it. Or you distance yourself from God, either because maybe you partly blame Him, or because you're like, how can He love me? Look, I'm carrying this thing around. And also I'm just too exhausted to spend any time in prayer with Him because this is like in my mind all the time. Your spiritual growth gets stunted if you this is all you think about, you just can't get past this. So we want to get past it, but we don't want to get past it at the same time. So we're stuck in this limbo. What do we do? Does the Bible have an answer for this? And this is kind of a side point. I think it's worth mentioning is, the other thing that carrying this around us does, is it hurts to carry this around because this is really heavy. But in a sense, we prefer to carry this kind of self-loathing, this self-hatred. I can't forgive myself for what I've done. It was too bad. Because if we actually look deeper than this and actually feel the actual pain of what we did, that's actually more painful. I don't know if that makes sense to you. But the actual hurt of what you did and saying, I really hurt that person. Look what's happened. That feels worse than the self-loathing carrying this